Hello, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here today. If you're listening to this right now, maybe you needed a quiet place. Maybe you needed a voice that doesn't rush you. Maybe you didn't want to talk, you just wanted to listen. Today, I want to talk about something very simple and very deep at the same time. Something we all experience, but rarely speak about. Today, I want to talk about those moments when silence feels better than talking. Not because we are angry, not because we have nothing to say, but because words feel heavy, because explaining feels tiring, because being quiet feels safe. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone, and you're in the right place. Let's begin gently. I remember a morning a few years ago. It was early. The sky was still pale, almost gray-blue. The city outside my window was awake, but quiet. Cars moved slowly. A few people walked past, heads down, hands in pockets. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, holding a cup of coffee. The coffee was hot, but I didn't drink it yet. I just held it. My phone was on the table too. There were messages. Questions. People asking things like, "Are you okay? What do you think about this? Can you call me?" I looked at the phone, and then I looked away, not because I didn't care, but because, in that moment, I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to explain how I felt. I didn't want to turn feelings into sentences. Silence felt better. The room was quiet. I could hear the clock ticking. I could hear my own breathing, slow, in, out. In that silence, I felt something gentle, not happiness, not sadness, something softer. Space! Have you ever felt that sometimes silence is not empty? Sometimes it is full of thoughts, full of feelings, full of things we don't yet have words for. Let me tell you another small story. One evening, I was walking home after a long day. I had been teaching, talking, listening, explaining all day. My voice felt tired. My mind felt full. As I walked, I passed a small park. There were people sitting on benches. Some were talking. Some were looking at their phones. One elderly man was feeding birds. I sat down on a bench and watched the sky grow darker. The air was cool. Leaves moved slightly in the wind. A friend called me. I saw the name on the screen. Normally, I would answer. Normally, I would say, "Hey, how are you?" Normally, I would talk. But this time, I didn't. I let the phone ring. And when it stopped, I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. That surprised me, because we often think silence is a problem. We think silence means something is wrong. We think silence means we are failing to communicate. But sometimes, silence means we are listening not to others, but to ourselves. Sometimes, silence is the most honest response we have. Now, let's slow down for a moment and notice some simple language from these moments. Listen to this sentence. Silence feels better than talking. Say it softly with me. Silence feels better than talking. Good. Notice how gentle that sentence is. It doesn't blame anyone. It doesn't explain too much. It just states a feeling. Try this one. I don't have the words right now. Repeat after me. I don't have the words right now. This is a very human sentence. You can use it when you feel overwhelmed, when your emotions are real, but unclear. Another one, I just need some quiet. Say it slowly. I just need some quiet. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to apologize. This sentence is enough. Now, think for a moment. Not too hard. When was the last time you felt that silence was easier than speaking? Maybe it was after an argument. Maybe it was at work, in a meeting. when everyone was talking and you felt invisible. Maybe it was with family when explaining yourself felt like too much effort. You don't need to answer out loud. Just notice the memory. Silence often appears when we are tired of being misunderstood. I think many people learning English feel this very deeply. You want to speak. You have thoughts. You have opinions. You have stories. But the words don't come easily. Or they come slowly. Or they come wrong. And after a while, silence feels safer than making a mistake. Maybe you've been there. I want you to hear this clearly. Choosing silence does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are giving up. It means you are protecting yourself. But there is another side to this too. Let me share something honest. Sometimes I hide in silence. Not because I need rest, but because I'm afraid. Afraid of saying the wrong thing. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of not being understood. Maybe you felt this too. There is a silence that heals. And there is a silence that isolates. Learning to tell the difference takes time. I remember a class I taught many years ago. There was a student, let's call her Anna. She was always quiet. She listened carefully she took notes. She smiled politely, but she almost never spoke. One day, after class, I asked her gently, "Do you feel comfortable speaking English?" She looked down for a moment. Then she said, very softly, "I think a lot, but when I speak, it doesn't sound right. So I stay quiet." That sentence stayed with me. I stay quiet. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't lack of interest. It was fear. Silence can be a refuge, but it can also become a cage. And this is where language learning becomes something more than grammar. When we learn English, we are not just learning how to speak. We are learning when to speak, why to speak, and when silence is serving us or limiting us. Let's look at a few more gentle expressions together. Listen carefully. I'm thinking. Repeat after me. I'm thinking. This is a beautiful sentence. It gives you time. It creates space. It allows silence to exist without disappearing. Another one. Let me think for a moment. Say it slowly. Let me think for a moment. This sentence turns silence into something active, something respectful. And one more. I'll say it when I'm ready. Repeat. I'll say it when I'm ready. This sentence gives you ownership of your voice. Now, I want to return to a quieter place again. Imagine you are sitting alone. Maybe in your room. Maybe on a bus. Maybe outside. Somewhere calm. You are not talking. You are not performing. You are just being. In that silence, ask yourself gently, am I resting or am I hiding? There is no right answer, only an honest one. Sometimes we need silence to recharge. Sometimes we need courage to speak even imperfectly. I believe learning English is a lifelong conversation between these two states, speaking and being silent, trying and resting, expressing and listening. I often tell my students, you don't need to speak loudly to be heard. You don't need perfect English to be understood. Your voice matters, even when it shakes, even when it pauses, even when it comes slowly. And your silence matters too. When it is chosen with care. When it helps you breathe. Let me share one last scene with you. Late at night, after finishing work, I sometimes sit by the window. The world outside is quiet. Lights are on in a few apartments. Someone laughs in the distance. A dog barks, then stops. I don't speak. I don't plan lessons. I don't think about the future. I just sit in those moments. I am not a teacher. I am not explaining English. I am just a person listening to the quiet. And strangely, that's often when the best words come to me. Not forced. Not rushed. Silence prepares the ground for language. Maybe that's true for you too. Maybe today you didn't need to talk. Maybe you just needed to listen, to feel understood without answering. That's okay. Remember this. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are learning at your own rhythm. When you speak, let it be honest. When you are silent, let it be kind. You are not just learning English. You are learning how to notice your inner world, how to respect your pace, how to trust that your voice will come when it's ready. Thank you for sharing this quiet time with me. I want to stay with you a little longer in this quiet space. There is something important I haven't said yet. Silence is often misunderstood because the world around us is loud. People expect quick answers, fast reactions, clear opinions. When we hesitate, when we pause, when we stay quiet, others may think we are unsure, or distant, or weak. But inside, something else may be happening. Inside, you may be organizing your thoughts. Inside, you may be protecting your emotions. Inside, you may be choosing care over noise. I remember a conversation I didn't have. A close friend once asked me a question that touched something deep in me. A question about my future, about choices I hadn't made yet. I opened my mouth to answer, and then I closed it, not because I didn't trust him, but because the truth inside me was still forming. So I said, I don't know yet, and then I let the silence stay. That silence was not awkward. It was honest. I don't know yet. Say that sentence with me. I don't know yet. This sentence is powerful. It gives you permission to be unfinished, to be human. Many English learners feel pressure to always know, to always answer, to always perform. But real language is not a performance. It is a relationship, and relationships need pauses. Think about how children speak. They stop. They repeat. They change direction in the middle of a sentence. They are not embarrassed by silence. They live inside it. Somewhere along the way, we forget how to do that. We start to believe that silence means failure. But silence is often where meaning begins. When you listen to this podcast, you are practicing English in a quiet way. You are letting the language wash over you. You are allowing your mind to absorb rhythm, tone, emotion. You are not forcing output. And that is not laziness. That is learning. Let me say something very clearly, especially if you are struggling right now. You do not have to speak all the time to improve your English. Listening is not passive. Silence is not empty. When you listen calmly, your brain is building patterns. Your heart is connecting sound with feeling. This is deep learning. Now, let's try a small reflection together. Listen to this sentence. I'm not ready to talk about it. Repeat it slowly. I'm not ready to talk about it. This sentence sets a boundary. It respects both you and the other person. Another one, I need time to think. Say it gently. I need time to think. These are sentences you can carry with you. They turn silence into communication. Sometimes silence feels better than talking because talking asks us to be someone we are not ready to be yet. And that's okay. I think about all the times I stayed quiet in meetings, in groups, in rooms where English was flying fast around me, even as a teacher, even as someone confident with the language. I've felt that moment, the moment when speaking felt heavier than staying silent. Confidence does not mean speaking all the time. Confidence means choosing your moments. If you are listening right now and feeling tired of explaining yourself, tired of translating your thoughts, tired of trying to sound right, I want you to know this. Your silence is not a failure. It is information. It tells you something about your energy, your emotions, your needs. And when you listen to that, you grow not only in English, but in life. Eventually, words will come. They always do. but they come best when they are invited, not forced. So tonight, or today, wherever you are, allow yourself to be quiet without guilt. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice your breathing. Notice how language lives inside you, even when you are not speaking it. You are becoming fluent not only in English, but in yourself. And that matters more than speed, more than perfection, more than noise. I'm glad you stayed with me in this silence. Let's stay here a little longer. Sometimes, after we accept silence, something subtle begins to change. The silence stops feeling like a wall. It starts to feel like a door. I've noticed this many times in my own life. There were periods when I spoke less, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was listening more closely to my thoughts, to my doubts, to my direction. During those times, I often felt invisible to others. People would ask, "Why are you so quiet lately?" Or, "Is something wrong?" And I would smile and say, "No, I'm just thinking." But inside, something important was happening. Silence was helping me hear myself again. When life becomes noisy deadlines, expectations, comparisons, our inner voice becomes very quiet. Not because it disappears, but because it is drowned out. Silence brings it back. And this is deeply connected to language learning. When you learn English, especially as an adult, your mind is already full of responsibility, full of worry, full of pressure to be competent. So when you try to speak, everything comes at once. Grammar, pronunciation, fear, self-judgment. It's exhausting. No wonder silence feels better sometimes. I want you to know something reassuring. Fluency does not grow in panic. It grows in safety. Safety comes from allowing yourself to be quiet without shame. I've seen this again and again with learners. The students who improve the most are not always the loudest. They are the ones who listen deeply, who notice patterns, who feel the language before they force it out. They let silence prepare them. Think of silence like soil. You don't see anything happening on the surface, but underneath, roots are growing. If you pull the plant too early, it breaks. Language is the same. Now, let's try another gentle sentence together. Listen carefully. I'm listening. Repeat it. I'm listening. This sentence is simple, but powerful. It tells the other person you are present, even if you are quiet. Another one. I'm taking it in. Say it slowly. I'm taking it in. This sentence is beautiful because it describes learning without pressure. You are not producing. You are receiving, and receiving is part of fluency. Sometimes, silence feels better than talking because talking exposes us. It shows where we are unsure, where we are still learning. Silence lets us rest without being seen. But one day, often quietly, unexpectedly, you notice something. A word comes to you faster. A sentence forms more easily. You understand without translating. And you realize the silence was working. I remember the first time this happened to me in another language I was learning. I had spent weeks mostly listening, feeling frustrated, feeling slow. Then one day, in a simple conversation, the words came out naturally. I didn't think, I didn't prepare, they just appeared. And I smiled not because the sentence was perfect, but because it was mine. That moment doesn't come from forcing yourself to speak every second. It comes from patience. If you are quiet right now in your English journey, please don't rush yourself. Quiet does not mean stuck. Quiet often means becoming ready. Of course, there will be moments when silence is not what you need. Moments when staying quiet keeps you small. Moments when fear disguises itself as calm. When that happens, be gentle but brave. Say one sentence, just one. It doesn't have to be clever. It doesn't have to be long. Even something like, "I'm trying. Say it with me. I'm trying." That sentence carries courage. Learning to speak is not about eliminating silence. It's about moving naturally between silence and speech, like breathing in and breathing out. You need both. So if today feels like a listening day, let it be a listening day. If tomorrow feels like a speaking day, welcome it. Trust the rhythm. You are not late. You are not behind others. You are exactly where you need to be for your own life. Language will meet you there. I'm grateful you're sharing this quiet journey with me. Before we part, there is one more feeling I want to sit with together. It's the feeling that comes after silence, not the silence itself, but the moment when you slowly return from it. You may know this moment. You've been quiet for a long time, listening, observing, holding things inside, and then, one day, you speak not loudly, not dramatically, but honestly. That moment feels different. The words are fewer, but they feel truer. I've learned that silence changes our relationship with language. After silence, we don't speak just to fill space. We speak to connect. I remember a conversation with a student who rarely spoke in class. Weeks went by. She listened. She nodded. She stayed quiet. Then one day, during a simple discussion, she raised her hand. Her voice was soft. Her sentence was short. But the room felt still when she spoke, not because her English was perfect, but because her words were real. She wasn't performing. She was sharing. That is what silence can give us intention. When silence feels better than talking, it often means we are learning to choose words with care. And that is a skill, a deep one. In life, many misunderstandings come from speaking too quickly, from reacting instead of responding, from talking before we understand ourselves. Silence slows us down. It gives us time to feel before we explain. That's why silence is not the enemy of communication. Unawareness is. When you learn English slowly, mindfully, you are training awareness. You are learning how tone feels, how rhythm carries emotion, how simple words can say complex things. This is not small work, so if someone ever makes you feel uncomfortable for being quiet, remember this. You are not silent because you are empty. You are silent because you are full. Full of thought, full of care, full of becoming. And when you speak, even if your grammar is imperfect, even if your accent is strong, even if your voice shakes, your words will carry weight, because they come from listening first. As we end this time together, I want you to take one quiet sentence with you. Listen carefully. I'm allowed to take my time. Say it softly. I'm allowed to take my time. Let that sentence stay with you in your English journey and in your life. You don't need to rush your voice. It knows when to arrive. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening deeply. Let's remain here together, just a little longer, without rushing toward an ending. There is something gentle that happens when we accept silence without trying to fix it. It stops feeling like something we must explain. It becomes something we can simply live inside. I've come to believe that many of us learn to fear silence very early. In school, silence meant you didn't know the answer. At work, silence can look like uncertainty. In relationships, silence is often misunderstood as distance, so we learn to fill the space with words, with jokes, with explanations, even when we are tired, even when we are unsure, even when we don't truly feel ready. But the body remembers another truth. The body knows that silence can be a place of rest. Have you noticed how your shoulders drop when you stop talking? how your breathing slows when no one expects an answer from you, how your mind feels wider when it doesn't have to perform. This is not accidental. This is human. Language came from silence. Before words, there was listening. Before sentences, there was breath. When you learn English through calm listening, through story, through moments like this, you are reconnecting with the natural order of language. Listening first, feeling second, speaking when ready. That order matters more than any rule. I often think about people who say, "I understand English, but I can't speak." And I gently think to myself, you can speak. You just haven't felt safe enough yet. Safety is the true foundation of fluency, not confidence, not speed, not vocabulary size. Safety, when you feel safe, your tongue relaxes, your mind stops racing. Your sentences don't need to be perfect, they just need to be honest. Silence is often the first sign that you are searching for safety. And that search deserves respect. There were times in my life when I chose silence because I was growing in a direction I couldn't explain yet. Words would have made it smaller, quieter, less true. So I stayed silent, not forever, just long enough for clarity to form, long enough for intention to settle. When words finally came, they felt rooted. That's what I want for you too. Not forced speaking, not anxious talking, but rooted language, language that rises from understanding, not pressure. Let me offer you another simple sentence, one that is very useful, very human. Listen carefully. I'm still learning. Repeat it. I'm still learning. This sentence does something important. It removes shame. It opens space. It tells the truth. No matter your level, no matter your age, no matter how long you've been studying, this sentence will always be true. And there is freedom in that. Sometimes silence feels better than talking because talking feels like pretending to be finished. But you are not finished. You are unfolding. And unfolding takes time. If today you only listened, that was enough. If today you repeated one sentence quietly, that was enough. If today you understood a feeling in English before you understood every word, that was more than enough. Progress is not always loud. Some of the most important changes happen quietly, without witnesses, without applause. They happen inside you. So when you find yourself quiet in a conversation, or quiet in your learning, don't immediately judge that moment. Ask gently, what is this silence giving me right now? Rest, protection, understanding, preparation. Silence is not one thing. It changes meaning depending on how you listen to it. And you are learning how to listen to English and to yourself. That is a rare skill. As we continue this journey together, episode by episode, story by story, remember that you don't need to become louder to become fluent. You need to become more present. Presence turns listening into learning. Presence turns silence into strength. I'm honored to be a quiet companion in your process. Not pushing, not rushing, just walking with you at your pace. And whenever you're ready tomorrow, next week, next year, your voice will be there, waiting patiently. Let's keep moving slowly, without trying to arrive anywhere too quickly. There is a quiet truth I've noticed over the years, both as a teacher and as a person living inside language. Many of the most meaningful moments in our lives happen when we are not speaking. They happen when we are watching, when we are waiting, when we are allowing something to unfold instead of controlling it. Think about moments like these, sitting on a bus, looking out the window, not listening to music, just watching the city move, standing in a line, lost in thought, not checking your phone, lying in bed before sleep, when the world finally stops asking questions. In those moments, You are silent, but you are not absent. You are present in a very deep way. Language lives there too. Even when you are not speaking English, English is still moving inside you. Words you've heard before float up. Sounds repeat themselves quietly in your mind. Phrases settle into place without effort. This is how real learning happens, not through pressure, but through familiarity. Not through fear, but through trust. Sometimes I worry that learners believe they must always do something to improve. Speak more. Study harder. Push faster. But growth does not always respond to force. Sometimes growth responds to patience. I've had students who felt frustrated because they were quiet for months. They thought something was wrong. Then suddenly, one day, they surprised themselves. They spoke. Not perfectly, not confidently, but clearly enough to be understood, and more importantly, clearly enough to feel true. They often said the same thing afterward. It just came out. That sentence tells us everything. When language comes out naturally, it means it was already there. Silence didn't stop it. Silence prepared it. This is why I never rush quiet learners, and I hope you never rush yourself. If silence feels better than talking right now, listen to that feeling. Ask what it's protecting. Ask what it's building. Very often, silence appears when you are becoming more sensitive, not weaker. More aware of meaning, more aware of tone, more aware of how words land. That awareness is the beginning of wisdom in language. Let me share a small personal moment. There was a time when I was learning how to express difficult emotions in another language. I knew the vocabulary, I knew the grammar, but I stayed silent. Why? Because those emotions deserved care. They didn't want rushed sentences and they didn't want borrowed expressions. They wanted honesty, so I waited. And when I finally spoke, the sentences were simple. I feel tired. I don't know what I want yet. This is hard for me. Nothing advanced, nothing impressive, but they were real, and that made them powerful. You don't need complex English to say something meaningful. You need presence. Presence is what silence teaches you. Silence teaches you to notice when a word fits and when it doesn't. It teaches you to feel when a sentence is ready and when it's not. This is something no textbook can give you. Only time can, only listening can. If you feel quiet around native speakers, that doesn't mean you don't belong. It often means you are paying attention. And paying attention is how you learn the music of a language, not just the notes. So please don't measure your progress only by how much you talk. Measure it by how much you understand. By how calm you feel while listening. By how gently words come to you now compared to before. These are real signs of growth, and they are often invisible from the outside, but they matter. As we slowly come closer to the end of this shared moment, I want you to carry one final idea with you. Silence is not the opposite of speaking. Silence is part of speaking. Just like rest is part of movement. Just like night is part of the day. You don't need to escape silence to become fluent. You need to walk through it with trust. Your voice is not lost. It is resting. It is forming. It is becoming clearer. And when it speaks, it will sound like you. Thank you for staying with me this long. Thank you for listening without rushing yourself. Let's allow this moment to stretch a little more, without trying to fill it. There is a quiet courage in staying with silence. Most people run from it. They distract themselves. They scroll. They speak just to avoid feeling what is underneath. But you are still here. You are listening. And that tells me something about you. It tells me you are willing to be present with yourself. That willingness is rare. I want to talk about something subtle now, something that often goes unnoticed. Silence changes how we hear words. When we are constantly talking, our words come from habit, from patterns we repeat, from phrases we already know. But after silence, words come from choice. You choose one word instead of another. You feel the weight of a sentence before you say it. You notice how your voice sounds in the space. This is when language becomes personal. I've noticed this especially when people return to speaking after a long, quiet period. Their English may still be simple, but it feels intentional. They say things like, "I want to say this clearly. Let me try again. This is important to me." These sentences don't come from speed. They come from care. Care grows in silence. Silence gives you time to ask yourself, what do I really want to say? Not what should I say? Not what sounds correct, but what feels true. That question changes everything. Many learners struggle not because they lack vocabulary, but because they don't trust their inner voice yet. Silence helps rebuild that trust. It's like tuning an instrument. You don't play loudly while tuning. You listen. You adjust. You wait until the sound feels right. Your voice is the same. And here is something I want you to hear very clearly. You are allowed to take up space slowly. You don't have to enter conversations fully formed. You don't have to speak in long paragraphs. You don't have to be interesting or impressive. You are allowed to speak one sentence, then stop, then listen again. This is how real conversations work, even between fluent speakers. There is a myth that fluent people talk all the time. They don't. They pause. They hesitate. They choose silence when it feels right. Fluency is not constant talking. Fluency is comfort with rhythm. Talking, pausing, listening, responding. Silence is not a gap in that rhythm. It is part of it. If you've ever felt embarrassed by silence in English, I want you to gently challenge that feeling. Ask yourself, am I embarrassed because silence is wrong or because I was taught to fear it? Very often, it's the second, and fear is learned, which means it can be unlearned. The more you allow silence without judging it, the more natural your speaking will feel when it returns. This is why I encourage you to listen to English calmly, not as a task, not as a test, but as a presence. Let English sit with you while you cook, while you walk, while you rest. Let it become a companion, not a performance. Over time, you'll notice something beautiful. Your inner voice will start thinking in English softly, without pressure, not in full sentences at first. Just feelings, images, simple words. That is language taking root, and roots grow quietly. There is nothing dramatic about this process. No sudden transformation, no loud moment of success. Just a gradual sense of ease. Ease with listening. Ease with not understanding everything. Ease with being quiet when needed. And then, one day, ease with speaking too. I hope you give yourself permission to move at that pace. Not the pace of others. Not the pace of the internet. Not the pace of expectations. Your pace, because your voice deserves to grow in an environment of patience. If silence feels better than talking right now, let it be a teacher, not an enemy. Let it show you what you need. Let it guide you gently toward clarity. You are doing more than you think. You are learning in a deep, lasting way. Thank you for trusting this quiet space. Thank you for trusting yourself enough to stay. And now, it's time to let this moment come to a natural close. Not suddenly, not sharply, but gently, the way quiet evenings end, the way deep breaths return to normal, the way understanding settles without announcement. If you are still listening, I want you to notice something. You stayed. You didn't rush away from the silence. You allowed yourself to be here without needing to respond, explain, or perform. That matters, because it shows you are capable of learning in a calm, human way. When you turn this off, nothing needs to change immediately. You don't need to speak more today. You don't need to prove anything. Just carry this feeling with you, the feeling that silence can be safe, that your voice does not need to hurry, that language grows best when it is treated with care. Your English journey is not a race. It is a relationship. And like all meaningful relationships, it deepens through listening, patience, and trust. Whenever you feel pressure to speak before you're ready, remember this moment. Remember that silence once helped you breathe, and it will again. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for sharing this quiet space. This is English with Thomas. I'm Thomas. Keep speaking, keep growing, and keep trusting yourself.